normally we do we have somebody to introduce the speaker. And since I'm on the committee, I'm introducing myself. And I wore my name tag, so I wouldn't forget my name. But it's upside down, so I can't read it. It's good to be with you. We're going to be covering a topic that could be interpreted, and perhaps actually is, the antithesis of what our worship service and theme were about this morning. To kill or not to kill, does God really care? And when we talk about a loving God, how does this kill stuff make any sense? And if you don't think there's a lot of talk about killing in the Bible, even commanded by God, hang with me and we'll take a look at that. But to be able to, excuse me, to be able to have a sort of a framework to work with on this topic,
Good morning.
I want to take a moment because of the nature of the topic. I want to take a moment to talk about this thing called ethics and how we can sort of break it down. Over the years, I have come to kind of an umbrella picture of ethics. And if I had a red marker, you could think it was a commercial for, what's the name of that insurance company? Travelers. Do you sell it? Well, you can. Okay, and my artwork, my brother is the artist in the family.
Can't even see it.
Running out of ink.
Try a blue one. Look and see it.
Let's try this again.
Yeah.
Okay, this pink red, yeah. And so I'm going to make an umbrella here and try to make some sense out of this. If we look at the word ethics, how would, what sort of words pop in your mind to define that word ethics? You want to give it a shot? Honesty, moral.
What we ought to do.
What we ought to do. Proper. Yeah, we're moving in the right direction. One of the definitions that I grabbed onto was that in the world of philosophy and moral ethics and that sort of thing, ethics is the grand picture. It is the search for the good. What is good? And how do we find that? How do we move in that direction? And then we often use moral or morality or morals. When we talk about morals or morality, it seems to me that we're talking about community. Morals, let's see if I can get my green here. Okay. Oops. We're stuck with one color this morning. I was going to be colorful. Okay, morals or morality. Morals, it seems to me, is determined by community. It's not an individual determination. We practice morality, we practice morals in our effort to find the good, but those morals are really defined by the community or the sub-community that we're part of. And they shape and mold us, strongly influence. But then, often we use the term values. I would contend that values are individual. What do I value as a person when it comes to moral issues? I can buy into or opt out of the community's moral value system. But somewhere along the line, whether it's my individual values, my community's moral system, we search for the good. Now, when it comes to Christian ethics, what is the starting point for good? Where do we start when we ask the question, what is the good?
Jesus' life.
Jesus? Can we get bigger?
Bible.
God. Okay. Jesus, well, at Trinity we would be doing the same. But when the thing about Christian ethics, and also for other religious communities, for instance, our Jewish brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Buddhist brothers and sisters, our Hindu, there is within that culture, in that whole understanding of what is the good, a God nature. God is the determiner of the good. So, when we ask the question, what is the good? Remember Jesus answered a question about that. Or not a question, but he responded to a comment. Somebody came up to him and said, good teacher. And why do you call me good? Only God, my Father in heaven, is good. The groundwork was established by Jesus, so you've got to pay attention to him. And if we're saying that God is the good, what then becomes our search in our personal values and morality or morals when it comes to our journey as Christians? What's our job? How do we find it? What's the big challenge that faces us then? To know what set of ethics to live by. It's, you know, this is not rocket science. Mainly because if it were rocket science, we would have already crashed. And with my leadership, I'm not, you know, I never did science well. You know, philosophy, history, theology, that sort of, yeah, those the big issues. But we'd never make it off the launch pad otherwise. What is the challenge under this kind of picture when it comes to especially to understanding ethics? Who do we have to understand? God. Yeah, see, you knew the answer all along. You're sitting there, what's this question? The struggle for us is to understand, to come to grips with the big umbrella, God. What is it that God expects of us? And how do we, as a community of faith, frame that understanding of God and the ethics, the teaching of God? And then how do I apply it to my own life? And that's coming down the umbrella. Going up the umbrella, you have to go the other way. Do my personal values reflect the morality of my community as a Christian? Does my community reflect the values, the moral framework that comes in the ethics that God creates as the big picture? Ethics is the big picture stuff. So that's where we're journeying. I gave you a handout, and we've already covered topic basically number 1, except that that there's a question that I have. The topic we're covering, it revolves around the word kill. Kill. In the world of philosophy, to kill or not to kill may be a question that would be open for great discussion, exploration, highly dependent upon the community in which we live, the moral fabric of that community, and then our own personal values. But in the world, in Christian ethics, in the world of theology, which basically means God talk, real simple definition. So anytime we talk about God, we're being theologians, regardless of how sophisticated or unsophisticated we may be at the moment. See? So we're all theologians. The question is, what is it that is God's intent, desire, when it comes to kill? So that's where we journey. For me, it's been a personal journey that I guess, in a way, I could say has covered 68 years. I'm not sure if I could claim the first year, but I experienced the first year. And somehow it was instilled in those first years with a value system and a morality that in some way, shape, or form had to do with killing. I did not become aware of that until I got older, as most of us are not. But I think some of it came from the fact that my father was a career Marine, and 21 years of active duty and 9 years of reserve duty, and he retired with 30 years as a chief warrant officer. Had originally been in infantry, a rifleman in China and Mongolia back in the 30s. Before we supposedly were at war with Japan. Some of the Marines were shooting at the Japanese instead of the Chinese. But so I was raised in an environment that was greatly influenced by the fact that I was born at the United States Navy Hospital at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Okay? And then when my father retired from the Marine Corps, he went to work as a civilian with the Air Force. So he was part of Air Force, United States Air Force Civil Service. And I was in Tucson, and the air base there was Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, a major air base of Strategic Air Command, SAC, which had the responsibility originally with bombers and then missiles, that combination, of being the massive retaliatory strike force of the United States during the Cold War. So I was raised very much around that environment, where killing was not forbidden, where killing was part of life. It's the job. But I quickly say, as you well know, under very restricted, controlled conditions, okay? The Army and the Marine Corps and the rest of those folks do not need Rambos. Rambo is a Hollywood caricature, not the reality of the military. So we struggle with that question of how do we understand this God? The religious influence. And we can go to the golden rule. Do on, what is it? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, or some sort of structure like that. Is that uniquely Christian? Nah. Where else might we find that teaching? It's part of Islam? Part of
Judaism.
Judaism?
Confucianism?
Huh?
Confucianism?
Yes, Confucianism, Buddhism. Yeah, the Buddha actually taught that. So it's kind of a universal with out of religious framework. There is that reality is there. And how do I love my neighbor? You know, how do I? Let me reframe that because I just jumped ahead. Okay, to do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Does that mean you'd kill them because you'd want them to kill you? You know, I'm not doing excited about that idea. I remember one of the family friends, again a retired chief warrant officer from the Marine Corps, a veteran of Guadalcanal and Korea and other places like that. And he said, you know, Paul, you got to understand that the job is not to die for your country, it's to make sure the guy over there dies for his country. Okay, that's kind of a different way to look at it, isn't it? And then I met a young Peace Corpsman who said that if I am going to die for my country, I want to die not looking down the barrel of the gun, but perhaps having the gun look at me. I think maybe that was an influence of another piece of love your neighbor. Between Judaism and Christianity and Islam, remember Jesus was asked what is the greatest commandment? In all four Gospels, in Deuteronomy, throughout Scripture, the answer is there. It's not unique. Do you remember what the answer was? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, all your strength. And, yeah, and the second is equal, your neighbor as yourself. To love your neighbor, does that mean as an act of love I'm going to shoot you? I'm going to starve you to death? I'm going to hang you? So, see? This gets kind of complicated. It's not a lot of fun. It was more fun talking about the Big Bang Theory and things like that these last few weeks than it gets into this. So, we open a door and we begin to look. How is it that God wants us to act when it comes to killing? If you were to answer that question, what would you say is the big guide, ethical guide that God gives to us when it comes to killing?
Fifth Commandment.
It's the Fifth Commandment. Or if you were a Baptist, the Sixth Commandment. But we come out of the Western Catholic tradition, so 5. Yeah. And what does the Fifth Commandment tell us? Thou shalt not kill. So, we got the big exclamation mark statement without a question mark behind it. A command. One of the 10 Commandments. You shall not kill. Although nowadays, with advanced scholarship, and it's not just the scholarship that has come out of the current work, what is the word that is used instead of kill? Murder. Murder. Because if you go back to the original Hebrew, the word is murder. But King James Version translated as kill. That's the main source. And interestingly enough, that Hebrew word that is used for murder, and I'm not even going to play Hebrew with you. I mean, I can pretend to know some Greek, but I never did well in Hebrew. I can't even remember how to do the alphabet anymore. So. But I do know that the Hebrew word for murder is also used in Scripture and means kill. So there is a lack of clarity and interplay in that word. But if we use the word murder, is that a discriminator? Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, to say kill, an admonition, a command against killing, is a little bit different than a command against murder. There's all of a sudden some definition going on there. Martin Luther has something to say about killing. And since Martin Luther comes out of a Roman Catholic tradition, and he was a scholar of languages, Greek and Hebrew, so he knew what he was doing. I found it interesting that he translated "Thou shalt not kill" as the commandment in the German, because he took, from the Hebrew to the German, and he used "kill." And if you've never read the Book of Concord, published originally in 1580, I would encourage you to do as Lester does. And that is, he keeps one right next to his bedstand. Every night, he reads himself to sleep, reading the Book of Concord.
I read it once and only once.
The Book of Concord, just so you know why I'm going to this for a few minutes, and we'll come back to it next week, was published in 1580 originally, and it was the effort of the Lutherans in Germany to find common ground, because there was conflict and disagreement and all that sort of stuff. And so they collected the documents into one book that said, this is who we are. It was not signed, by the way, fascinating. It was, as a document, not signed by theologians, pastors, ordained folk. It was signed by the princes, the electors, the mayors. It was a document signed by the civil authorities that said, this is who we are. I thought that, it's fascinating. That's a whole story in itself. So Luther's small catechism is in here, and all of us that in some way, shape, or form have been shaped by the small catechism. But there is a large catechism that Luther wrote in 1529. And he wrote it to instruct pastors who needed some help figuring out what the faith was about, okay? So it's more extended. And, on your handout, I put down Luther's definition out of the small catechism. You shall not kill. What does this mean? Asks Luther. So what? Luther would say. We are to fear and love God so that we neither endanger nor harm the lives of our neighbors, but instead help and support them in all life's needs. Whoa. Those of us who went through confirmation had to learn that in some way, shape, or form somewhere along the line. And some of you can still recite that without hesitation. I'm married to somebody like that. I taught it. I still couldn't recite all that stuff because I don't do memory work well. But listen to what Luther said in the large catechism with respect to the Fifth Commandment. You are not to kill. Luther says, here we leave our own house, Father, thou shalt love honor your mother and your father and all that, and the first commandment, and love the Lord your God, and honor God. And we move into the community. We go out among the neighbors in order to learn how we should live. That's morality, isn't it? Out into the community. How people should conduct themselves among their neighbors. Therefore, neither God nor the government is included in this commandment. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Neither God nor the government is included in this commandment. Nor is their right to take human life abrogated. That's our good buddy Martin Luther, who said we are to love one another, and drove home the gospel. Where did he ever get that notion? I thought this was the commandment, thou shalt not kill. There was the non-negotiable of the ethics that God has laid on us. And Luther, speaking out of the Christian tradition, because this didn't come out of his own brain, is saying, yeah, that applies to how we treat our neighbor, but it doesn't apply to the government or God. There's more. You know, if you're kind of bored, you want to get deeper. I think there's a copy you could find up in the library. That's the Book of Concord. That's why Lester and I read it every night before we go to bed, so that we know this stuff. So where do you think Luther got that idea that it applies to the neighbor? And especially if I would go on reading that, he would talk about enemy. You know, he said, it's easy to be nice to people you like and agree with you. But what about your enemy, who is also your neighbor, right? Because Jesus said, who is the neighbor? You're not the one, the good Samaritan. No, yeah. Okay, where do you think Luther may have gotten that notion that God and government are exempt from this commandment? I bet you have answers, don't you? You have some ideas. Huh? Well, how do you like the title of this handout I gave you? Evil Bible. Yeah. Did you forget to pick up your Evil Bible handout? Oh, good. I was searching the web. Somebody once said that the World Wide Web, the internet, is wonderful because we're going to learn so much. The biggest challenge, and some of you know this better than I, is to filter out a lot of stuff, okay? But it is an open exchange of ideas, whether they're accurate or inaccurate, right or wrong, bizarre or whatever. They're there. I find myself checking the sources on a lot of emails. I get some of these emails from friends of mine, and I will go check it out, on Snopes.com or Fact Check, and then I'll send that back to them. Or I will send. Sometimes I'm even nasty enough, or not nasty, just kind of particular. I'm sure there are other terms there too. Like, check your sources, where I will send the response back to everybody on that list. And that's why I don't usually, I do that. What is that, BCC or whatever? Blind. Yeah, see, I do that so that can't do that, but some people haven't figured that out yet. So I'll just respond to all. And so they get all that stuff too. My response back to that. And it's usually a gentle response, but it's obviously a disagreement. Some of my friends have stopped sending me some of that stuff. Okay, evilbible.com is not a Christian group or a religious group. It's a secular group and identifies as well. The reason I chose this, because it talks about murder, killing in the scriptures, okay? And the reason I chose this source is because it was the best source I could find. Now, yeah, it's kind of like, you mean when you went to others you couldn't? Yeah, this was the best source collection that I could find. And I used to have a book, and I think I gave it away. I can't find it anymore. And it's called, Is That Really in the Bible? This is one of those examples. This stuff is in the Bible. And kill witches. You should not let a you should not let a sorcerer live. So you kill him. Kill homosexuals. Kill fortune tellers. That's, some people have tried to practice this stuff and have practiced it. Death for hitting dad. Whoever strikes his father or mother shall be put to death. That's, Exodus 21:15. You can just walk through this. So back to my question. Where do you think Luther got the idea that God and government are exempt from that commandment? The Bible. Yeah, yes ma'am.
You quote all these things, and the title of our forum today is "What Does God Say About Killing?" Are you saying that this is what God says about killing?
I'm going to give you the short and sweet and simple answer
No.
first. And the answer is yes. But God also has much more to say. That's the longer answer. That's why we're here.
I'll take the longer answer.
Okay. So you stay with me today and then come back next week. Okay?
Oh, shucks.
Because we listen to the voice of God and we try to make sense of it. And when it comes to this whole issue of killing, there are all sorts of admonitions that are directed in the name of God towards others. If somebody does not hold your same faith, you flip through there. Kill somebody who does not believe the way you believe. We have people around that do that nowadays. So yeah, and perhaps the reason I picked that handout was because of the title. Perhaps that's one of the things that people see out there. And they say, these Christians are really good talkers about love. But look at this. Look what it tells us to do. They say the Bible is the Word of God, our guide in all matters of faith and life. So is this our guide? In Acts, there is God credited with killing the husband and wife who kind of absconded with some of the funds kept to themselves. Remember, there was this Christian, what's called New Testament communism, community, all held in common. And this one husband and wife were part of that, but they held a little bit to the side. And Peter, speaking in the name of God and with the authority of God, zaps them dead. So it's not just the Old Testament, and there's some other stuff. Okay. So that's part of our challenge. But let's contrast it now, okay? I think I tried to do some contrasting here, Old Testament, New Testament. Let's see. We know that in Job it basically says God is the creator and giver of life. And then in John 1:1-5, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made, by the Word. All came into being, the creation, through the power of the Word, capital W, which is then later, we know, becomes flesh and dwells among us, and that is Jesus. Okay, so back to the Gospel of John. So we know that life itself comes from God. That's what the biblical message is. And for the prior 3 weeks, we have the wonder of hearing that. So, 3 weeks prior to last week, we had a chance to hear that story told so beautifully. The creation story. So I think we can, that's pretty standard. There's no real conflict there in the biblical story and material. But the first introduction of death in the Bible, of killing, belongs to Cain and Abel. In Genesis. Why does Cain kill his brother Abel? Anger. Because God says, hey Cain, your brother Abel's offering is better than yours. So he gets angry. What other words might describe some of what was going on inside of him? Jealousy. Ah! Did you ever in your life want to clobber somebody because you were jealous of them? I know when I was, younger, it still happens. But I've become a sophisticated adult who restrains those feelings and thoughts most of the time. And I'm not jealous. I wish I had that, but I'm not jealous, right? Okay, jealousy, anger, and Cain kills his brother. And when God comes to Cain, he says, where's Abel? That was interesting how God does this. You'd think you'd know where Abel was, right? Okay, where's Abel, Cain? I don't know. What am I, my brother's keeper? Powerful question, isn't it? Am I my brothers and sisters' keeper? Oh. What does Jesus, then I kind of flip to the other side. In 5:21, does somebody want to look up that Matthew 5:21 and 22? I didn't have enough Bibles to go around to everybody because we don't have enough Bibles to put out on all the seats and all the tables. And I actually thought it was dumb for me to put them up on the front seat. You can have your own. You can have your own too, see? I thought, why am I putting him on the front seat? Okay, Matthew 5:21-22. Who has it? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Okay, go ahead.
You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire.
Whoa. That's out of the Sermon on the Mount. It is Jesus speaking. The Sermon on the Mount, in some way, shape, or form, is found, all those teachings are found in all four Gospels. So I think we're pretty safe in saying, in some way, shape, or form, Jesus said all that. Okay? So that carries authority. What does that say about anger and killing? Is Jesus saying, yeah, just don't murder, but you can kill people for other reasons? And what are the methods of killing that he says? When he says, thou shalt not kill, you shall not kill, all of a sudden he's taking the word kill and expanding it beyond my walking up to you and shooting you or poisoning you, like in murder or something like that, right? He's expanded it. What other things has he expanded it to?
Judgment,
Anger, insults. When you call your brother, your sister, a fool. Whoa. Boy, I'm guilty. I never did anything to deserve being called a fool, but my brother, you know. And who is my brother and my sister? Those are my neighbors, right? You fool. So Jesus is already expanding this thing broader than we would like to think sometimes. Let's take somebody look up Matthew 43 to 48. I mean 5, 43 to 48. 5, we're still in Sermon on the Mount. And I contrasted that with the words of Ezekiel that said basically, go out and kill everybody in the name of God. Kill the enemy. Men, women, children, level them and level the land. That's, is that in the Bible? Yeah. And who told him to say that? God. That's what the Bible is saying. So, what about Matthew 5, 43, 48? Who got it? You, go for it.
Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
No.
43 to 48.
43 to 48.
Oh, you want the whole, okay.
Yeah.
You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is.
Bit of a difference. Let's take a look at Jeremiah 48:10. I'll stop with that because I'm trying to help me process this. That Jeremiah text, the great prophet Jeremiah, 48:10.
Accursed is the one who is slack in doing the work of the Lord, and accursed is the one who keeps back the sword from bloodshed.
Yeah. Okay? Who keeps back the sword from bloodshed. That is a command by God in that we are ordered to kill others. That's what that's saying. Or we are cursed if we don't. There's a context and all, we need to remember there's a big context and all that for that. But in that context, there is still the crediting that God says you should not kill until I tell you to kill. So, back to my title, to kill or not to kill, does God really care? Perhaps about this time, you might have the sense that, well, the answer to that is pretty simple. It depends. Okay? Okay. The references in John and Matthew, Sermon on the Mount, who is the voice there? Who is the person teaching it? Jesus. Okay. When it comes to our efforts to try to figure out what is the grand ethic, whether it's killing or how we treat other people in any way, shape, or form, how the place of women and all, children. As Christians, who are we supposed to listen to more than anybody else?
How would you do unto others as you would have them do unto you?
Yeah. And Jesus speaks those words, doesn't he? In my mind, Jesus becomes the trump card in any area of Christian ethics. I never did play bridge very well. And my big achievement, or my goal, and then the achievement when I did play bridge was get the dummy hand. Whoever was playing with me never really appreciated that because I was supposed to engage more. But I did learn, I also learned that in hearts too. You have a trump card, right? And the trump card, what does the trump card do in bridge or hearts? It wins whatever's out there, right? It trumps everything. So let's go and hang on to that for a while. Jesus and the trump as the trump card when it comes to these issues. But I want us to take a look and not, we can say the Bible that's evil Bible, because there is some stuff that it's really, really crazy in there. If we literally believed everything in the Bible, all equal, we all know that we'd all be in trouble. Jesus got crucified for doing, saying, no, not everything is equal. Isaiah and the picture of the peaceable kingdom. Let's take a look at that. That's Isaiah 11, 1 through 9. Isaiah 11, 1 through 9. See, I'm being a good teacher that gets Lutherans into their Bibles, so that you can go home and say to your Baptist neighbors, we study the Bible. We have to get it in our hands, and we have to say it and read it and talk about it. You can always tell a group of Lutherans that come to a Bible study, they don't bring their Bibles. Actually, that's not true completely. But it's ironic. Get a bunch of pastors that go to a gathering, and somebody refers to the biblical stuff, and the pastors, they don't have their Bibles along to do the Bible study. We're guilty of that sometimes, okay? Who found the Isaiah text for us? Somebody, okay, and?
Do you want to read the whole thing?
Well, yeah, those 9 verses. I know it's a little long, but.
A shoot shall come out of the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea.
Thank you. And then if the one that I often go through, the Micah 4:3, talks about the concept of shalom, which means peace and prosperity in Hebrew. And it's one of those beautiful points that the promise is that they shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks, and nation shall not take up sword against nation anymore. The wonderful black spiritual of down by the riverside, huh? Shall learn no war no more. Learn war no more. There is in the Old Testament and in the New Testament a thread that runs through it that contradicts so much of the other material that says go and kill, go and fight, go and destroy. Somehow, that sense of shalom, that sense of love and peace, are not lost in the cultural tradition, in the morals, because in the morals of Israel and in the morals of the community of the Jews in occupied Palestine, some of that other stuff was there. What did the high priest say when they realized that Jesus was a problem child and that he might lead the people into revolution against Rome? And that if he did that, because he's claiming to be the Messiah, and the Messiah is to come as another King David with sword in hand on a white charger and conquer and run the pagan Romans out. And the high priest knew that if that happened, the streets of Jerusalem would run red with the blood of Jews. And so what was the high priest's solution to the problem? It is better that
One should die.
than that the whole nation be destroyed. Even in the time of Jesus, within the moral framework of Judaism, there was a justification for killing. And I would venture to say that even in our day, 2,000 years on since Jesus, that we're still struggling with this because we find ourselves justifying it in the name of God. Pearl Harbor. I haven't heard the song for ages. What was that? The chaplain, supposedly, I don't think this really happened, but it's myth, legend, was holding Sunday morning chapel service, Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, and the Japanese attacked, and I think the legend is that the chaplain on one of the ships, people were sitting out there worship, it started, this is not the time to wait for the closing hymn. And he basically said, praise the Lord, battle stations, pass the ammunition. And there was a whole song that came out of that. Whether it was real or not, I have no idea. But it was praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. And that's all I know of the song. I should go online and try to find that someplace.
We'll all stay free.
Huh?
And we'll all stay free.
And we'll all stay free. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. As a chaplain, a Christian chaplain, a leader of the church, he was saying, what? Go kill. Now, is there justification for that?
Yes.
Depends on the context. Okay. It depends on the context, doesn't it? So, see, this is not a real simple issue. And it's not a matter of black and white or even gray sometimes, but it's there. Okay.
Well, you're looking for something to do. What is the position on hazing? There were some events that had happened in this community before, and of course, in my position, I had faced that situation a number of times.
Luther, as a Christian, whose voice would we listen to answer that question?
What was the question?
What does one do about hazing, and where does that fit into the whole picture here? Thou shalt not kill versus the other things that we've been talking about.
Expanded to bullying.
Yes.
We've got 2 youth who in the last 2 weeks have killed themselves because of bullying.
That's what I'm referring to.
Remember Luther's definition? We are to fear and love God so that we neither endanger nor harm the lives of our neighbors, but instead help and support them in all of life's needs. Luther got that out of the Bible too. So. And Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, if you call your brother a fool, I think that would begin to be a little bit of hazing and bullying. If you treat another human being as a thing, an object for your desire, you are no better than a murderer.
The process of the victim is torture. So that, it seems to me that's worse than outright killing.
Now next week, next week, we're going to take a look at some of that. I'm going to, where have we journeyed as a Christian community? And one of the areas we're going to look at is in the development of the history of the church. There are those who justify war and killing, and then there is what's called the peace church. The Quakers, the Mennonites, the evangelical brethren, the Hutterites, the Amish, who take the word and command, thou shalt not kill, absolutely 100% literally. And then there are those who, remember when, in your history, when the Wehrmacht under, the Nazis began to conquer Europe so that Germany could have Lebensraum, the living room, space to live, and they went forth with emblazoned on their belt buckles a certain saying. God with us. We are going in the name of God. We are doing this war in the name of God. It's sort of like praise the God, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition kind of thing. All of us can look there. So there is that side. And then it seems to me that the church has struggled with somewhere in between those. Where do we live out our faith? And how do we live it out? And as a result, there have developed out of Christian tradition and some other traditions, the whole concept of just war, that there are times as an absolute last resort that a society must resort to war. Luther talks about that, and we'll talk about that. There's also the laws of war. I've always known it because I was an army chaplain, the laws of land warfare, but since Noel is here, there is also encompassed in that law of land warfare the laws of naval warfare, even though the Navy's not taught about. But the laws of war, efforts to try to control that. We'll talk about how that came into being, where we as Christians can, struggle with. Is it a Christian thing to become part of the military and to be engaged in war? Was there something that Luther was talking about when he said God and government are exempt from the commandment? Why did he ever come there? We'll have some fun next week doing that. I hope. See, that's why the answer is yes, but. Hey, thank you very much. Go have fun.